Today at ShopDap.com we talk about upgrading brakes on a Mark 8 GTI. Having a car that goes fast is great, but having a car that stops fast is even greater. Improving the braking on your car can be done in a variety of ways. Big brake kits like this European Club Sport front brake kit, exclusively found at ShopDap.com, is going to be a popular but very expensive option. For many people, simply upgrading pads and rotors are going to be a great option for your car. Some brake pads have a better initial bite, which gives you more confidence in braking. Other brake pads like these are going to be intended for track use, which really means they're intended for use in higher temperatures. Before you get all Johnny Race Car and start clicking that add to cart button on those race car brakes, you might want to understand what that means. These G-Lock R12 brake pads are actually race car pads that fit your car. They're designed to function between 173 degrees Fahrenheit and 1860 degrees Fahrenheit. What that means is if your brakes are below 173 degrees Fahrenheit, your brakes are outside the normal working range. And what that means is your car won't stop real good. In addition, these pads are going to squeal like me after getting tied. Never mind. They're also going to wear your brake rotors more than the street alternative pad. What I generally recommend for most people's use is to recommend a slotted rotor and a sport pad, just depending on the use that you have intended for the car. Now on to the bigger boys. The stock rotors on this car are 340 millimeters in diameter and have a single piston caliper that is sliding. The Club Sport brakes are 357 millimeters in diameter and have a 2-piston sliding caliper. In theory, a 2-piece rotor like this should be lighter, so let's go weigh them and find out. We got a stock rotor, and this is a stock caliper with pads inside of it and a carrier all there. 42.6 pounds. Club Sport setup, pads, same basic stuff as before, 49.8 pounds. Club Sport rotor weight, all by itself, 27.6 pounds. Let's check out the stock rotor. Stock rotor, 340 millimeter, 23.8 pounds. Let's check out the StopTech rotor. 340 millimeter StopTech slotted rotor. This is intended for the stock size calipers, not the Club Sport ones. 23.6 pounds. StopTech rotors, if you're just upgrading them, they save you a little bit of weight, 0.2 pounds. And the big boys don't actually save you any weight, but you do get bigger brakes. So it's not like there would be weight savings, because if you had solid disc that was not a 2-piece that was the same size as that, it would be even heavier. But this one's actually heavier than the stock size. You got it. Just to show you what a 2-piece rotor looks like, this is a solid rotor. This is all 1 piece. This is a 2-piece rotor where this portion, the outer portion, is 1 piece. The center portion where the hub is a separate piece, and then there are these pins. Those are all pins that are hammered in. I have no idea how they get them in there. And they hold it to the rotor. So the rotor portion on the outside is held to this by all these pieces around. Fun thing that I actually heard of, my friend Jamie at Elite Motorworks, if you don't know, we swapped the Scirocco at his shop. He had diagnosed a problem where the pins on this had loosened up on a car that he was working on, and every time you would hit the brakes or hit a bump, it would actually make a noise because it was kind of banging every time travel or hit the brakes or anything like that. So that was really neat. Neat diagnosis. Never seen that before. I thought it was pretty cool. We swapped a Scirocco. I haven't been drinking, but people oftentimes say I sound like I've been drinking. It's mostly sleep deprivation, just so you know. Brace yourself for a spectacular DIY. Do it yourself. You won't do this yourself because you probably aren't going to buy these brakes because they're really expensive, and I understand. But we do have other options, ShopDap.com, where you can shop for a variety of items, pads, rotors, all kinds of items for your Volkswagen or Audi at ShopDap.com. We're taking off the caliper and the carrier, which means we don't need to take this caliper bolt off because that's a waste of time. We're taking off this bolt right here. This is the carrier bolt, 21 millimeters. It's a big boy. Requires a little bit of pulling. There you go, see it? It's loose. I'm not gonna take this out all the way because we're gonna now break these brake lines loose so that don't have to soak ourselves in brake fluid. Before we break any of those lines loose, what we need to do is start with our brake pedal depressor, push down, and then you slide this guy against the seat to keep your brake pedal depressed.
Look depressed.
What does it need, a sad face on it? Once you have that installed, you're gonna break a line loose, push it as far down as you can so that it holds the pedal to the floor as much as possible while you're doing this procedure. Breaking this line loose, 11mm wrench, and expect to get some brake fluid when you get it loose. Good luck with that, because I'm struggling apparently. Clip, this guy has to come straight out. Pop goes the weasel. The brake line fell out too while I was doing that. It was just booing. Now that we've lost that one, we did do a search. We sent out a search party for it. Search party came up unsuccessful, so we'll have to get a new one. We're gonna try to be more careful with this one, since I don't want to do that again. I need to have at least one of them. I'm sliding out this brake pad wear indicator. There's only one. Okay. Apparently there's no. This is just a dummy plug. So we're gonna slide that right on back in there.
Wait, what?
This is where you would have a brake pad wear indicator, but this isn't connected to anything. So they probably did this for mass production reasons. Every car gets the same harness. Kind of surprising me this car doesn't have a sensor. We can plug ours in now, which is pretty neat, as a matter of fact. I don't know what that's gonna do. If you have a Golf R, you probably have one. If you got a GTI, and you're one of the poors like me, even though this car is almost as expensive as a Golf R. That's the way the cookie crumbles. There you go. No brake pad wear indicator for the poors. Torques. Oop, careful, that'll come loose on you. Okay, there you go, 340. Now, 1, 2, 3. This one, 340. This Club Sport, if you look, it's vented. See all these vents? Allows all that cooling. You're probably gonna ask me if you should do these with 340 rotors, and I guess you could, but I don't know what kind of cooling properties it would have. Someone should test that, but it won't be me. The engineers who developed these brakes thought it important enough to make this part. It's not much different than the question of how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Did they ever answer that question?
The world may never know. Probably. The owl's probably, I think they killed that owl. What could go wrong with that? Okay. There we've done it. Rotor backing. So, here we go. Line up your set screw. We're gonna put that guy in there. New, of course. Only the newest. Here is our caliper carrier. These clips go in there. Fun fact, this thing is kind of shaped like an F. F is, don't put that in the wrong way because it'll grind on the rotor. So if you look here, the F would be facing towards the rotor because the rotor would be in the middle. That is F and wrong. So put it this way with the F away from the rotor, the flat side towards the rotor. I learned that by putting it in the wrong effing way. So caliper carrier, slide it in here. This would be the time that if you screw those up, you would know it because you could kind of just go up and down the rotor like that and it'll be scraping away. These, we're gonna put on screen, I believe it's something like 200 Newton meters, I believe, which is quite a few Newton meters. If you don't have Newton around to help you, you're gonna need it. This one's an important one. So these are new bolts, but these for sure are something that you would not be as inclined to reuse. Also included with our kit, but not included with other things like, for example, brake pads or something like that you might take them off with. Yeah, these are supposed to be replaced. Just to be clear, 200 Newton meters is quite a few Newton meters. Yeah. I've been reminded that maybe in the past I had not told the kids at home, set your torque wrench to 0 when you're done using it. That way it stays properly calibrated. Dun, 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 dun. Brake pads. Okay, so the trick with these guys, these are springs that you just installed there. So you push in and then you lock it in just like that. You see how easy that was? I almost look like an actual technician. I'm not an actual technician, but I play one on TV. This is the one with the sensor. As you saw, we had the dummy plug And this dummy's gonna plug it in just to see what happens. Lock it in just like that, like a professional. Look at this, dummy plug, gone. Real plug, undummied. There we go. Okay, caliper on. Here we go. New bolts come with thread locker on them. You're supposed to replace these. These you don't. These are less important than the other ones, but they're still important. So I would do these too. I am gonna torque these. We'll put the torque spec on screen now. Okay, this line, super easy banjo bolt. We got this guy smushed between there, washer on the other side, threader in. If you wanted to, you could use factory Golf R lines. We are not, we're using stainless ones. We got stainless ones in the back. Fun fact, if you are doing stainless lines, you wanna match them with stainless lines on the other side. So if you're doing them in the front, you wanna do them in the back. Threaded it in now. Imagine that. I was struggling real hard there. Right now I'm just placing this line into this little channel for now because that's the clip we're gonna not put back in because we lost it. My flat spot, oh, there we go. Okay, I know you can't see much, but too bad, because I can't see either. What you do is if you're having a tough time getting at the thread, you can kind of wiggle the bottom while you're twisting this to try to get it to catch, because if you're at the wrong angle, you have a tough time getting it in. Left some glove there, and we're gonna tighten that up. Hold it on one side, tighten it on the other. If you go crazy with this, you might break a line, so don't do that. Now, since I have all this fog in my life, without the fog lights, I'm gonna need to make sure I have extra stopping to combat the fog. You're probably wondering, Paul, with all those big boys, what kind of wheels can I fit around that? So I took the liberty to pull this pile of trash, along with a couple other ones, out of our storage. Is an 18-inch BBS VZ.
Ooh, that's close.
It's snug. The wheel weight's just ever so close.
Oh my gosh.
The wheel weight's ever so close to that situation. But guess what? They clear, all right? If you double stack a wheel weight, it's gonna rip that baby right off. This one's pretty dumb for me to do, but here I am. 17-inch, I forget the name of this wheel. Can't imagine this is gonna clear. No, it doesn't. Yeah. This is what they call a no-go zone, right here. No-go zones. 18-inch, new speed. Okay. Oh, I forgot, this needs a hovering. You can see that even though this is sitting on the hub, meaning it's dropped down and isn't centered, this has plenty of clearance. So tons of clearance on the face here, tons of clearance here. We are gonna put these on at some point, probably for track wheels, and like if we do track day stuff with Charlie, our friend Charlie Bucket. Okay, now we're gonna bleed. Here's what you do. All the calipers, all these brake lines you take off, the fluid pushes the pistons to stop your car. There now is air inside of all of the lines here. That, if you try to drive your car or don't properly bleed them, you could die because your brakes won't work. This is important in the not dying column. Properly bleed your brakes. We're about to do that now. To start with bleeding our brakes, we're gonna remove this cap. There's just a piece of rubber on here. I'm using pliers. You can use your fingers. It's just a piece of rubber. I'm pulling it off mostly just so you can see it. And there's your bleed screw, 11 millimeter you're gonna use to break that loose. In the rear, this is your bleed screw cap right here. And you can just pop it off like that. Here's our brake fluid. As you can see, there's really no brake fluid in there. So, not a shocker there, we just leaked it all over the floor. So what you do is start by filling up that reservoir. Yeah, my laugh made it wiggle a little bit. Now that that's full, we're gonna start by filling up our pump here so we can pump it up. Yes. RBF 600 fluid, performance brake fluid. We're gonna be doing so much performing after this. We're gonna remove this guy. And if you notice, we threw this away every video so far. But now it's for good because they'd be causing fires. Recall. Before we get started with getting everything bled, we have to pump this up. Now, the correct amount is 2 bar as per spec. So that's 30 PSI or 29.4 PSI. So you just pump her up. On old cars, the procedure is much less PSI because on like cars like, for example, B5 Passats or Audi S4s or A4s, the master will explode and puke brake fluid all over the place if you get more than about 10 PSI. Here is your bleeder on the rear. We're starting at the rear of the vehicle, furthest from the master cylinder. We're gonna check to make sure that's the correct procedure. Yeah.
You're a loser!
Everything I just told you is 100% false. The correct procedure is to start on the driver's side front, go to the passenger, then go to the driver's rear, then the passenger rear. It is completely opposite of what you're used to on older cars. That is a procedure on many newer cars, I'm told. That's what I was told. What you're gonna see as I break this loose, this one has not been broken loose yet. It's gonna take some time before any fluid comes out. It's gonna be air. And the reason why is because obviously we had these lines completely off, the calipers are completely empty, everything else. So you can see it's like, hey, is this thing even open? And there it is. So you can start to see fluid come out, you see air bubbles. There should not be any air bubbles in your system. Air bubbles can compress, whereas fluid cannot. So what will happen is if you have air in your lines, it will cause your pedal, your brake pedal to go to the floor because it's squishing the air inside the system. Couple things, we're adding more brake fluid to our system here. The reason why, you wanna make sure you don't run this low, because if you run out of brake fluid, you'll pump air into your system. So get over here, pump it up a little bit more, make sure you keep pressure on it. Don't go too high. And in case you didn't know, while I'm pumping, you can purchase this at our site, shopdat.com, which we'll link to in the description below, where you can purchase this wonderful tool. Get your wrench in there, break it loose. What you're gonna do, you're generally gonna wanna have this on top. This is just a bottle that attaches to it, and you're gonna have brake fluid come out. Now, I'm not gonna push it on there because I want you to kind of see what's gonna happen. So, oops, see, there you go. There's no fluid initially, and then it starts to come out. There's fluid running down here. Now, probably we could stand to get a little bit looser, although that was pretty loose in there. Now we are gonna go around one more time and see what the fluid looks like coming out. When you're done, we'll pull our cap off. Now this guy is gonna be real full, and you're gonna wanna get down to the appropriate level. Where your level is, there's a min-max, and we are actually in pretty good shape right below that max text. If you weren't, you could take something like a suction tool, like we use for the oil change stuff. Make sure that tip is clean because you wanna stick a dirty tip into clean brake fluid, and then suck it down to the appropriate level. Before you test drive a car like this, number one, always pump your brakes. Pump them up. That way you make sure you have a solid brake pedal. Before you go anywhere, stand on that brake pedal before you go anywhere to make sure that it doesn't fall to the floor or it doesn't feel super squishy or anything like that. You can always repeat this bleeding procedure, go around again if you want. If you've done this procedure and your brakes are still spongy after all this, meaning you hit the brakes, doesn't feel quite right, doesn't stop real well, there is an option that I can tell you that our shop had to do because I screwed up the first time I did it. The brake pedal felt like trash. This is OBD11. You can see this is the brakes here. Now there's a procedure for bleeding the system especially for the hydraulic unit. So you'll go down, go to basic settings, and you're gonna go down to bleed brakes. And then you can select your item of what you're bleeding and then repeat your process. That's something that had to be done because I didn't do it right. This is why you read before you do, but I was elected to lead, not to read. So I've been driving a couple days now on these brakes. Wanted to give a little bit of feedback. The brakes stop on hard stopping considerably better than the other ones. Mostly it's the initial kind of, as soon as you hit it hard and stab, the deceleration is much quicker than the other ones. One of the guys who was driving in Charles's car on the autocross event that we did, where we compared cars, made a comment that he was impressed at how good the brakes in that car were without having compared one versus the other. He just like, wow, these Golf R brakes are really good. They are awesome. They're also awesomely expensive. Thanks so much for watching. If you like these brakes, they look real neat. You can check them out at shopdap.com and subscribe, because it's something that you like to do to watch more of this content. Goodbye.